This is the Little Moments Count radio podcast, created in partnership with community radio stations throughout Minnesota. Each episode, you'll hear interviews with early childhood experts on how to support the important brain development that takes place in the first 1,000 days of life, just through little moments every day. Learn more at littlemomentscount.org/podcast.
Good day to be Indigenous.
Get up, stand up.
They are going to become more brutal.
Cody Cup, hit me cut again.
Because all the hippies were trying to be Indians anyway.
They're going to become more repressive because it's a matter of dollars and their illusionary concepts of power.
Hey, Victor.
We must live in balance with the earth.
And also with recent happenings at Wounded Knee.
I am awake.
Welcome to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Wakanjahade. A kadagi to all my friends and relatives in four directions. You are listening to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and I'm your host, Robert Pilot. We discuss local, national, Native news and events, and as you know, Chujunk, Native issues are human issues, and human issues are Native issues.
Yes, you are right, Jaga. This portion of Native Roots Radio is presented in partnership with Minnesota Public Radio and Little Moments Count. Little Moments Count is a statewide collaborative focused on helping parents and caregivers learn about the importance of brain development in the first 3 years of life. For more information, you can visit littlemomentscount.org.
Hey, we're all always excited here at Native Roots Radio to be partnering with Little Moments Count and to host these monthly conversations focused on early childhood development and how it's creating bright futures and strong communities. Today with us, again, we have Fawn YoungBear Tibbetts, and we are really happy to have you on, and we got to talk a little bit beforehand, but the things that you're doing are just so exciting, and let's talk a little bit about who you are and then jump into some questions about what's happening now. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me again. I really appreciate that. So I am the executive director of Wicoie Nandagikendan. We are Minnesota's first urban immersion early childhood program. We teach two languages, Dakota and Ojibwe. So typically when you hear dual language, you think Spanish and English. No, it's Dakota and Ojibwe are the primary languages that we teach in our early childhood program. And our students are 15 months to 5 years old.
Wow, that's cool. And then talk a little bit about yourself. It's like you have an awesome background. First of all, you graduated at Madison, which I love that city. And then also you're a product of Native American teachings here in schooling in your younger years.
Yeah. So my educational background really, I was in dental school first when I got out of high school, but ended up coming to Minneapolis. I was a student at Normandale at the time. And there was a group working on at-risk youth art programs, right? And so I got connected with that group, and we painted a lot of murals that were on Lake Street. We did the park at Cedar and Franklin Avenue. There used to be a gun shop and a liquor store right there by the school. So in the 90s, I've always kind of been around Minneapolis, so my whole family is here. We were in Madison for a while when my mom was in college. She also went to UW-Madison. So I ended up going back there myself. But I actually got there by way of College of Menominee Nation. So I'll give a shout out to our tribal colleges. We had a transfer agreement with the Sustainable Development Program. So I have a degree in Sustainable Development from College of Menominee Nation. And then went to UW-Madison, the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, and got a degree in life science communications there. That's my undergrad. And then I'm about halfway through a master's. Most of that was in environmental education. I ended up teaching at the Arboretum, teaching teachers for about 15 years.
Wow.
And then ended up in Bad River because we had done this Indigenous Arts and Sciences project. And tribal council said, if you want to do this work, you have to be here. And so I went up to Bad River, and I was stationed there for a long time while I was working for the university. But we worked with tribes to develop curriculum that was environmentally hands-on. So we would teach like water quality testing, but also had them connected with natural resources managers from the tribes and historic preservation officers. So like, for example, in Bad River, when the mining stuff was going on, right, we took all those students from the very top of the headwaters of the Bad River at Carolyn Lake and tested the water quality all the way down. They have a good 15 years of water data that they've collected. So if anything does ever happen there, they'll be able to prove right where it's coming into the river. And so really focusing on what were the tribal needs. And so when they posted the job here, it was during COVID, right? All the programs have been shut down at the tribes. And I see this job posting come across, and it's curriculum, it's language, it's working with food and in the garden. And I was like, man, that's my job. They wrote that job for me. And then, Lisa Bellinger and Jewel Arcorn was who interviewed me. And then I was like, okay, that's really my job. So I had worked with Jewel was one of our youth workers on those mural projects. So I've known her since 92. And Lisa, I've known my whole life, pretty much. Wow. So I was like, this is perfect. I get to do what I've been trained to do, but for my own community. And then, so I'm hitting my 5-year mark with the organization now. And when I started writing grants, they created a program director position. Jewel retired. She's done over 10 years of service to this organization in different roles on the board and served as director multiple times, have been brought back. And so we did a year of transition time in 2023, and Jewel retired in January 1st, 2024. I took over as the executive director. So for the last year, I've been doing this new position. Yeah.
Hey, let's talk a little bit about the kitchen program, where you prepare meals with focus on culture significance. Can you tell us about this?
Yeah. So, originally when I got brought into the organization, part of my job was to contract with someone, right? Gatherings Cafe, the food lab, different caterers and restaurant owners, to see if they would provide USDA reimbursable lunches. And, as I was walking around talking with everybody, most of the kitchens didn't want, it's a lot to go through that USDA training for reimbursable meals. And they said, that's not really what we do, right? We're like for-profit restaurants, and we can't wait 60 days for reimbursement to come through, or we can't meet the USDA school lunch requirements. And so we have recently opened our kitchen. Our child and adult feeding license application is going in, and we should be ready to serve at the beginning of next year. And not just our program, but for other programs, right? So I was contacted by Center School. They went through 5 caterers last year. Currently, they don't have a food service provider. And so we can take that group of kids on. That's about 45 more students. And so within a 10-mile radius of our kitchen, there are 600 Native students.
Wow.
Nabe Academy, Badote, Learning Center, Center School, our program, Baby Space, right? Like all of these Native youth serving programs. And so that's kind of our expansion plan, is to target those Native serving programs.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's exciting stuff. Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, when we come back, I want to get a little bit of talk about how, introducing, these foods to our relatives, how important that is. And we'll talk a little bit more, but really excited to have you on again, Fawn YoungBear, Executive Director. And we are the Wicoie Ia. Was that right?
Oh, Wicoie Nandagikendan.
Yes.
Did I get that right, Fawn?
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Haley, and thank you, Fawn, for your patience. This is Native Roots Radio, and heck, we'll be right back after this short break, Haley.
Stay with us.
Ho!
Hi, this is Representative Sharice Davids from Kansas. I'm Ho Chunk, and you're listening to Native Roots Radio.
And we're back to Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake, and this is Robert Pilot.
This portion of Native Roots Radio is presented in partnership with Minnesota Public Radio and Little Moments Count. Nearly 80% of brain growth happens in the first 1,000 days, and small moments of interaction, like talking, playing, reading, and singing, help create the pathways that build a child's brain during this early stage of life. For more information, you can visit littlemomentscount.org.
Hey, I want to welcome back Fawn YoungBear Tibbetts, and we're having a great discussion. But before we get caught up into more discussion about, how great this food program is, let's talk about the webinar and get that going, and then we'll talk about it too again and remind everyone at the end of the segment.
Yeah, so a lot of our Native organizations have kind of strategic plans. They're more like a wish list, right? And so we really took the last year and dove deep with some funder partners with the Indigenous Early Learning Collaborative, which is hosted out of Boston Children's. And it's a cohort of 4 of us. We've been doing some inquiry, and they gave us money to do a community research project, and then kind of gave us some guidance. And so in 2023, we really started looking at a full strategic plan so that we could get our own immersion campus here in Minneapolis. And we're doing a launch of that plan on the 28th. Boston Children's is hosting it. So there's a link available to you guys if you'd like to register for that. And we're going to take a real deep dive in that webinar into, the last 30 years, because we're coming up on our 30-year anniversary. This organization was founded in 1996 by a group of grandmothers. And so, and then looking 30 years into the future, right? So it's really a 10-year strategic plan, but we talk a lot more about the future. And it really started about a space, a building, right, of 4 walls. And when we were doing our inquiry, what we realized is there's multiple layers of space, right? There's physical space, there's the metaphysical spaces. And instead of saying what's our job? We said, what does a whole healthy Indigenous child look like? And what does a healthy led Indigenous organization look like? And how does that run? And then what's our responsibility to that child, to that family, and to the community? And it really kind of changed the scope of what we were doing. It made us look internally too at, a lot of our policies and procedures. And so we're going to go through that. It's going to be a beautiful document. We had King Dimitri and Pendleton come and take photos. And so his photos will be highlighted in the plan. And in the actual physical one when it gets printed out. So yeah, that's March 28th. Anyone can join. Brazelton's network will host 50,000 people on the stream at one time. So anybody can register, and that's the link to register for the event. And it starts at 2 p.m. our time. And it is going out across it's going out nationally. So we'll have some people from Hawaii that are partners that will be on there, and potentially, hopefully funders. And I think it's going to be a really good example of what our community can do if we are given the right tools. This is an extremely comprehensive strategic plan. I'm really excited about it.
Wow. That's awesome, Fawn. And, we're talking about a lot of things here, but I know food's really important too. And we talked a little bit about this at the end of last segment about just how important it is and empowering it is to have the children and families understand the traditional values and the foods that we really should be eating, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's kind of a multitude of things that have to happen, right? So I was just at the Lutheran Church, the Masonic Lutheran Church sold their building, which Wicoie has been nominated to receive some of the funding from that sale. So asked us to come present, and you can teach a man to fish or you can give a man a fish, right? That's the biblical. And so I had to tell them, well, you have to give them a fish so they get used to eating fish. And then you have to teach them how to fish, but you also have to teach them to clean the fish and to cook the fish, right? And so that idea of giving people foods, it's great, but does that really change behavior? And so we had originally done I think we have the most comprehensive food map of South Minneapolis that's ever been created. And so we didn't just look at stores. We looked at if they're accessible if you don't have a car. We looked at price gouging. And so like the Cub Foods here in South Minneapolis on Lake Street last year at Thanksgiving was charging $2.80 a pound per turkeys. But if you went to the same Cub grocery store in the suburbs, it was $1.89 a pound. And so you can find that on our food map, but we also listed all of the food shelves and community gardens. And so it's a very comprehensive list. You can go click on the food lab. It'll tell you what items you can purchase there. And the little corner stores, the bodegas, there's one on 35th and Chicago called Tony's Market. If you ever want to buy bulk hominy, that's the place to go. And so he sells this really beautiful Peruvian bulk hominy for $2.98 a pound. He really gears towards his Hispanic clients, right? So that's what I mean. I think it's the most intensive food map that's ever been done. But, when we were doing these surveys and we were asking communities about and asking the community about what do they know, what they like to know, what we found out is that our traditional foods are so expensive our families can't afford them here in Minneapolis anymore. Mm-hmm. So, and I hate to say this, but when traditional foods become trendy, it makes it unavailable to our communities. So for example, right now wild rice is about $20 a pound in Minneapolis. If you're a family struggling to pay your tuition and raise children and all of these things that we all have to do, that's really expensive. And so part of it is educating families. Part of it is introducing traditional foods to young kids' palates, right? Because they have to also want to eat the food. But it's also giving the opportunities for families. So one of the things I always talk about is that true food sovereignty only happens when you can harvest, hunt, gather, grow, and cook your own food outside of an economic system. Wow. And so we're going to be doing a bison butchering class that will be open to the community. We have some camp gear that families can check out, and we do harvesting trips to Pipestone. We're going to be doing the birch bark work with AIM has a grant. We're going up to Leech Lake this summer to do kind of the language portion of that. And we're also providing food. So, we got a freeze dryer now, and we produce all kinds of really amazing food that travels really well. And so we're doing a lot with that. But really, right now, our big focus is getting foods accessible to the families. And so Takabe started doing like a HelloFresh native meal kit. And I was like, that's awesome. So we started doing that. We had originally given all our families Dream of Wild House Indigenous food shares. And I was getting messages like, what do I do with turnips? How do I cook the greens? We don't know what to do with it. I don't want it because it's just going to go to waste. And so we just staggered back, right? So our first box was a bison taco box. Everything was made and measured out. All they had to do was brown the bison. We did a bison shepherd's pie as well. Obviously, that one had to stick it in the oven. Did like a soup box, right? So then they have to cut the vegetables. So as we do more boxes, the work that the families are going to have to do will increase. And then we have QR codes and a chef, and you can watch the chef cook the meal as you're making it at home. And then we'll be doing cooking classes. So it's like adults, teenagers, kids, the breakfast and lunch and snack, but really kind of, trying to get families to be able to implement it at home.
Fawn, this is amazing. And Haley, I see you popped up the website for more information. We have to get Fawn on again. This is a full show of information. I haven't even got past 2 questions that I have here. This is amazing, seriously. And could somebody, for our listening audience, give a quick shout out to the website?
Yeah. That is Wicoie. Well, I'll spell it, I guess. WICOIENANDAGIKENDAN.
Yeah. Well, for more information, check that out. And Fawn, we got to get you on again soon. This is amazing work that you're doing, and the legacy that you're part of with this organization and what you're doing for the community. I am just like totally blown away here. I'm in awe of you.
Well, maybe we could have you come out and do some stuff in the field and record some of the events that we're going to be doing in the garden. I think it would be really cool to be able to show folks. And, we can also share our upcoming calendar with you guys.
That would be so awesome.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, wow. A big peony Fawn. We got to get you on again soon, and please reach out to us again for that calendar, right, Haley?
Right.
Absolutely. We'll be talking about that.
Okay.
Hey, great having you on. Let's talk soon. Hey, if you're listening to this show, you are part of the resistance. From Chief Plentycoop's ground in which we stand on, the sacred ground. It's the blood of our ancestors. We need to resist, divest, join a group, and run for office. That's resist. We'll be back tomorrow. Thank you, Haley, and thank you all the guests. This has been Native Roots Radio.
Thanks for listening to the Little Moments Count radio podcast in partnership with community radio stations throughout Minnesota. You can find the Little Moments Count radio podcast wherever you get your podcasts and at littlemomentscount.org/podcast.